So my name's Nolan. I'm the business development manager at Allied Glass. Allied Glass, we look out the room. There's a lot of our customers in this room. Hi to everybody. We are a UK manufacturer. We've been making glass in the north of England for just over 150 years. And recently, things have very much changed for us, largely pushed by the gin boom and everything that's happening. I think that if you look at what's happened to containers and what we get to do in glass at the moment, it's really exciting. And I think if you think about gin as a category, it's becoming more and more competitive, and it's largely being pushed by everybody in this room. You know, if you think about how the consumer reacts to gin now compared to, let's say, 4 years ago, I think about when I go to the pub or go out for dinner, and before it was, you know, someone would have some beer, someone would have some wine, maybe cider. One or two people would be on gin, whereas if we go for dinner now with some friends, there's some part of the night that everybody's going to have some gin, and everybody's going to try something different. There's something for everybody to like out there, and that's what everybody's striving towards. It's a tight market, as we all know, and the key is how are you going to stand out continually for your customer? Now, when we talk to our customers that are the producers, the main key points that they drop onto are these 7 points. So, value. Does the cost of what you're doing meet what the customer wants? And are you even with that value of what you're proposing to the customer? Unique. Are you going to be unique amongst all these other gins that are on the market? Are you going to stand out? Are you going to give the customer a reason to approach your brand? Availability. This is really, really big, and it's becoming a bigger conversation. There are no secrets about it. Throughout Europe and now most of the world, there's a glass shortage. So if you are looking at launching a brand, or you're looking at expanding your brand, or you're hoping your brand is going to grow, which we're all hoping they're going to grow, you need to make sure that you have availability to make that happen. Because if you're not having those conversations, you can be caught out big time. Accessibility. Is your brand accessible to consumers? Whatever you're doing through how many SKUs you have, are you creating something not only for the liquid, but also how it looks, that the consumer is going to go to and that they relate to? More and more so, along with that, your brand story. You know, brand story is becoming more and more important. People want to know about it. People want to tell that story. People want to have the whole story of the bottle of gin that they're giving to their mom or their dad or their sister or their brother for Christmas or for their birthday. And then also, partnering with the customer. I think that, you know, especially because of social media, people want to know what Tom and Tina Warner are doing this weekend. It's part of the brand, and people need to buy into it. What were you doing last weekend? And then last but not least, carbon footprint. I think that, you know, if you look at the news, if you look at what consumers are saying, if you're looking at what buyers are saying, this is becoming more and more a piece of the conversation. Consumers essentially want to know that you are doing something for them that is helping their carbon footprint. And then when you start whittling it down, it falls into essentially 3 buckets, and if you cross them over, they all fall into 3 key things what consumers want. That's to be relevant, to be responsible, and also to have some variety. And I think back to that previous slide of all those bottles that are up there, more and more so, consumers want to buy into a brand, but they also want different things from a brand. So are you giving them variety in what you're doing? And also for, you know, those friends of mine in the pub, some of them don't want to commit to a full bottle. They want to taste stuff. They want to try different variants. So are you giving them variety and a reason to buy your brand? So what I thought would be the best thing to do is to go through a couple examples of some fantastic customers that we've worked with recently that are in different stages of their brand life, to kind of give you an idea of what we help with and what we try to work on every day to get to that point and create a standout brand for our customers. The first one that I want to talk about is Smeaton's Gin. Now, Smeaton's is a pretty cool story, I think, because Will and Michael that created the brand. Michael comes from a wine background. He's a grandmaster. I didn't even know what a grandmaster of wine was until I Googled him. And there's not many of these guys in the world, but essentially what it means is that he has got an amazing palate. And when they got the idea for the gin, they found a recipe in the Bristol archives. So fantastic. They've got the brand story. The liquid is going to be great. He's got a great palate. But also, you know, they were into this and they knew what was happening in the industry, and it was a competitive, you know, competitive market already. They needed to stand out. Now, you know, if you think about, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was a bit of a trend towards this bottle, the Oslo, the Nocturne, the Polo. It's got many names. But essentially what the trend was is that everybody kind of went into the same bottle, and it was a standard because you didn't have to invest in molds and it made sense, and you put your label on it and you got it to market. Unfortunately, when you put that bottle on the shelf, you kind of lost your presence because everybody was in the same bottle. And then these guys came along and kind of changed the game a bit. And I'd actually argue what King of Soho did there is that they, through some smart thinking about what they were doing with their packaging, they changed their brand from a regional brand to a national brand. They were now competing with some of the big boys because the bottle looked fantastic. So when we started digging into it with Will and Michael, it was all about creating something that was very special, and especially because their brand, they wanted to launch it in the super premium segment. So it had to be well thought out. It wasn't just a bottle. It was a standard bottle, but it was making it unstandard. It was making it unique. So they added elements to it, and they just didn't stop at one thing. They really looked into it, and they thought, okay, let's make something great. So they went from a sprayed bottle and a printed bottle to a fantastic tactile label. They've got a neck strap, and they've also got a necktie. And then it also comes in this fantastic wrap with inside of it, it's a brand story. And when I brought this bottle home, and as you can imagine, we've got a lot of bottles of gin at our house. I'm sure you guys all do as well. When I brought this brand home, Haley, my better half, was just like, that's it. This is my favorite bottle. And right away I thought, okay, this is fantastic. They're onto something. And where I really think that they are onto something is that they now can bring this product to a buyer, to a consumer, and they are batting with the big boys now. They literally have come in and they've got a great proposition that sits them at many levels. And in the first 12 months of their brand being out, other than getting some great listings with some great retailers around the UK, they also got recognition from the industry. So they won the UK Packaging Awards last year for the best pack and design, new pack and design. I was very excited, as you can see in that picture. But like in that category, they're against Nestle and BrewDog and Echo Falls, people with a lot more money and a lot bigger budgets than them, but they beat some of the big boys. And they also won a Masters at the Spirits Business Masters. So they've got that recognition and they're playing in a good game, and that's just from a standard bottle. What they've also had the flexibility to do is build their brand and get that accessibility and that brand penetration through partnerships with people like Avery's. So what they can do is then have a springboard for their brand and people discovering Smeatons through some local accessibility through brands that are trusted locally, like Avery's. The next step is moving into your own bottle when you get to where you need to be to go into that own bottle. And there's a lot of reasons why people do it. This is Will and Rubina from Curio Spirits down in Cornwall. Now, they were in a standard bottle, and you know what, we'll get into it in a sec, but actually their bottle looked great. They're kind of in that area of King of Soho, really stand out on the shelf. But in the last couple of years, things have really changed. This is the standard that everybody's going towards now. This is what you have to compete against. Now, when they first started, they teamed up with this fantastic agency down in Cornwall, Kingdom and Sparrow, and they've got this amazing label that's been hand-painted and then put onto a label. And when they came out, you know, they were in so many magazines. It was everybody, everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. Hit the demographic. They had a great brand story. It was selling well. But they had a little problem, and the problem is that they didn't ask their supplier what's the availability on this bottle? And quickly, they couldn't get the glass that they needed to sell their product, which, as you can imagine, the first 6 months of your business isn't a very good thing. So they changed their bottle. And while they changed it, they decided, okay, well, let's try to make it a little bit premium. So they went for a thicker base. It was a little bit stubbier. It's really nice, worked well in retail. But they had some negative feedback from it, because one of the good things that they had for the first couple months of their brand is that they were doing very well in the on-trade. And when they introduced this bottle, it was heavy. I've got remarkably small hands, and lucky people like me struggle with bottles like these, especially if you're a bartender and it's 3 deep at your bar on a Saturday night and you're making cocktails. So quickly, they were taking off a lot of the cocktail menus. The other thing that they didn't do when they switched into this bottle is they didn't learn from their first mistake and find out if they could get this bottle continually. So they had the same problem once again. So this is when we got involved. And essentially, this is a really fun time to get involved in a project, because at this point, brand owners will know what's working, what isn't working, and then we try to create something that works for everybody, but also makes it their own, makes it a bit more tactile. So we spent a lot of time with the guys from Kingdom and Sparrow, and I really feel that we had a bit of a tough job, because their label was already amazing and that label wasn't changing. That was, that's their unique selling point. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create something that was unique, that was tactile, but also would be a blank canvas for them to allow for line extensions and do different things with their brand. So this is their new bottle that we released last year. It's kind of a combination of the two bottles. It was taking the learning, so they got rid of that thick base. They made it, once again, better to handle for the bartenders. Has a nice window so you can put that label on and you can do what you want. Some embossing on the shoulder. And if you notice, it's got a slight tint to the bottle. Now, their first 2 bottles were made in premium flint. So premium flint is all raw materials. We melt that down, makes glass, super white, Geisel. It's got all these different names. Standard flint, which they decided, has recycled content in it. So in the UK, our average running rate is 40%. And why it's only 40% is that, unfortunately, we're not the best at recycling in the UK. If we could source more glass recycled, we would 100%. But that's what we run at in the UK. But it kind of worked with their brand. And also, having that recycled content work with what their brand promises. We were actually, because we source our cullet, which is ground down recycled glass, we source it from all over the UK, and we were actually able to whittle it down to postcode level data to show that we source some of this glass from Cornwall. So obviously, recycled glass isn't going to be in every bottle from Cornwall, but if you recycle your bottle of Curio, there's a very good chance that it's going to go back in the system and hopefully end up in one of their bottles. It's great for their brand story. Another thing that we looked at is that because they're no longer buying their bottle from France and they're buying it from the UK, their transport carbon emissions went down by 60%. So that's a fantastic story in itself. Once again, falling into the whole kind of Curio thing, the whole Cornwall thing that they're going after. Also, what it's allowed them to do is brand extension through using that amazing label and having a big window. And they can even take it further, because they can go into spraying their bottle, they can go into printing it. There's a lot of things that they can do to continually push that brand and give the consumer reasons to come back and revisit Curio and what they're up to. The last example is Whitley Neal. Now, Whitley Neal is a big step away from Curio. I think we can all agree that Whitley Neal has done a fantastic job of growing their brand and growing their brand very quickly. I think that I'd struggle to think of another brand except one that's owned by the major 4 that has moved so quickly and grown so quickly throughout the UK and now throughout Europe and the world. Now, as you can imagine, Whitley Neal, a lot of the learnings that the guys from Smeaton's came from and the guys at Curio had, they learned all this stuff. They were in a good place when we were upgrading their bottle. What was driving them was the practicality of being able to grow their brand. Although it's painted, they're actually in that same Zadig bottle that Curio was, and they were having the same problem. They were struggling with supply. And what they really needed is they needed a whole bunch of glass that they could sit on and they could do what they wanted with it. But they also wanted to be a bit unique. So it was an evolution what we did with their bottle. And as you can see, their bottle is a blank canvas because it's heavily decorated. Now, you have to forgive me because I wrote this presentation about a month ago, and I'm pretty sure I was up to date with all the SKUs they have. But as we all know, they release a lot of gins. So if they decide, let's say next week, to release a sea salt and seaweed gin or something like that, they've got the versatility to do it, because essentially what they're doing is that, very much like Curio, they've created a blank canvas that they can decorate however they want. Therefore, because they've got a base stock that they can work from, their route to market is actually pretty quick. Whereas if you're developing individual SKUs, it can be a little bit longer. Oh, one more, sorry. What they've also done really well is that they've penetrated almost every channel that you can think that you can get to. So they've got their 1.75, they've got their liter for travel retail, their 750 for North America, South Africa, and parts of Asia. They've got their 500, they've got their 200, and they've got their 50. What that allows them to do is that it brings back to all of us sitting in the pub and deciding what our involvement with the brand wants to be. What it allows them to do is it allows them to cover all those channels and let people commit to their brands, or at least try to adopt that brand. I think there's a pretty good argument that what Whitley Neal has done is a bit of a masterclass of where you can take your brand. So, what does that mean for all of us, and what does that mean for myself as the business development manager at Allied Glass and to work on all these great projects? To be honest with you, I don't know. I think that, if you look at those key 7 points and you whittle them down to those 3 points, it's up to everybody in this room deciding what you're going to do, how you're going to be the leader, and how you're going to get all those consumers in a very competitive market to come to you. What we're going to be doing over the next couple of years, well, you guys tell me. Give me a call and tell me what you're thinking about, and we'll see if we can help you, or whoever your supplier is. But I'm very excited about what's happening, and I'm excited about where this is going. Just as a little bit of a plug for Allied Glass, there's 2 things that I'd like to mention to you guys. First thing is we do a thing called a Distillers Forum in the autumn. It's very similar to this, but with a wider spectrum. Through different channels. Please get in contact if you'd like to attend. It's up in Leeds. And secondly, we do a thing called the Golden Ticket every year, so we actually give away a set of molds, no strings attached. So make sure you look out at our social media to find out how you could win some molds this year. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoyed talking to you. Cheers.